The morning sun gleamed off the polished hoods of luxury cars as two high school seniors, Andrew and Tyrell, walked through the entrance of Premium Auto Gallery. The dealership was known throughout the city for its high-end vehicles, sleek sports cars with price tags that made most people's eyes water, and SUVs that cost more than some houses. The boys had just finished basketball practice at their high school, their gym bags slung over their shoulders. Both wore simple hoodies and jeans, nothing fancy, but they'd made sure to clean up before heading over. This visit wasn't just for fun. Both teens were top students in their business economics class and were working on a project about luxury brands and marketing strategies. "Man, look at that one," Andrew whispered, pointing to a midnight blue sports car with a curved body that seemed to be moving even while standing still. His eyes lit up with a mixture of admiration and determination. "Someday, I'm gonna own one of those." Tyrell nodded, pulling out his phone to take notes. "My uncle said we should check out the pricing structure and how they market to different customers." His uncle had worked his way up from washing cars to owning his own auto repair shop, and he had encouraged the boys' interest in business and cars. As they walked further into the showroom, they noticed how the other customers, mostly older white men in business suits, were being greeted warmly by sales staff. The boys moved toward an information desk, waiting patiently as the receptionist finished a call. "Excuse me, ma'am," Charles said politely when she hung up. "We're doing a school project on luxury vehicles. Could we possibly get some brochures and information about your financing options?" The receptionist looked them up and down, her smile fading slightly. "Let me get the sales manager," she said, her voice cooling noticeably. A few minutes later, a tall man with slicked back hair and a tight smile approached. His name tag read, "Mr. Whitfield, Sales Manager." He didn't offer to shake hands. "Can I help you, boys?" he asked, emphasizing the word boys in a way that made both teens stand up straighter. "Yes, sir," Andrew replied, pulling out his notebook. "We're working on a school assignment about luxury car marketing. We were hoping to learn about how different models are positioned in the market and maybe get some information about your customer demographics and financing options." Mr. Whitfield's eyebrows rose. "This isn't a library or a classroom. These vehicles start at $90,000 and go up to several $100,000. I doubt that's in your price range." His eyes flicked to their casual clothes and gym bags. "We understand, sir," Charles said, his voice steady despite the flush creeping up his neck. "We're not looking to buy today. This is research for our future. We both plan to work hard and someday—" "Look," Mr. Whitfield cut him off, "we have serious customers here. People who can actually afford these vehicles." He gestured toward a couple being shown a convertible by another salesperson. "I can't have you wasting my staff's time or disturbing our clientele." Andrew stepped forward slightly. "Sir, we're just standing here talking. We're not bothering anybody. Our economics teacher specifically suggested—" "I've got enough," Mr. Whitfield snapped, motioning to a security guard who had been watching from near the door. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a place of business, not a hangout spot for kids." The security guard, a large man with a stern face, walked over. "Is there a problem here?" "Please escort these two out," Mr. Whitfield said loudly enough that several customers turned to look. "They're loitering and disturbing the professional atmosphere." The shame burned hot on the boys' faces as the guard walked them toward the exit. Tyrell's hand shook slightly as he pulled out his phone and hit record, capturing the final moments of their humiliation. "We didn't do anything wrong," Andrew said quietly to the guard. The guard just shrugged. "Manager's orders, kid, nothing personal." As they stepped outside into the parking lot, the glass doors closing behind them with a final sounding thud, Tyrell looked at Andrew. "Call your dad," he said. "He needs to know what just happened." The walk to the bus stop felt longer than usual. Andrew and Tyrell barely spoke, the weight of what had just happened sitting heavy on their shoulders. Cars zoomed past them on the busy street, including several expensive models that normally would have made them stop and stare. Not today. Andrew pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. "I'm calling my dad," he said, his voice quieter than normal. The phone rang 3 times before his father answered. "Hey, Dad," Andrew said, trying to keep his voice steady. He failed. "What's wrong?" his father asked immediately, picking up on the tension in his son's voice. "Are you okay?" Andra took a deep breath and put the phone on speaker so Tyrell could hear too. "We just got kicked out of Premium Auto Gallery, the one on 5th Street. The words rushed out now, his voice getting stronger with each sentence. "We were just there for our economics project. We didn't touch anything. We were being respectful. But this manager, he acted like we were there to steal something or cause trouble." "What exactly did he say?" his father asked, his tone calm but with an undercurrent of steel that both boys recognized. Andrew looked at Tyrell, who nodded and pulled up the video on his phone. "I recorded the last part," Tyrell said into the phone, "when the security guard was walking us out." "Good thinking," Andrew's father replied. "Send me that video right now. Then tell me everything that happened from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." The boys took turns explaining how they'd entered the dealership, how other customers had been warmly greeted while they were viewed with suspicion, and how the manager had dismissed them without even giving them a chance. "He didn't even believe we were there for a school project," Tyrell added. "Like we couldn't possibly be interested in business or have plans for the future." There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. "Where are you boys now?" Andrew's father finally asked. "Waiting for the bus," Andrew said. "About 2 blocks from the dealership. Stay there. I'm coming to get you." 20 minutes later, a modest sedan pulled up to the curb. Andrew's father stepped out, dressed in a simple button-up shirt and slacks. Nothing about his appearance suggested he was anything other than a middle-class dad picking up his son after school. That was exactly how he wanted it. Few people knew that David Thomas was actually the founder and CEO of a tech company that had revolutionized supply chain management software. After selling his company to a larger corporation last year, he had become one of the wealthiest men in the state. But he had intentionally raised Andrew without the trappings of wealth, teaching him the value of hard work and character over material possessions. As the boys got into the car, David didn't immediately drive away. Instead, he turned to look at them both. "I want you to know something," he said, his eyes intense. "What happened to you today was wrong. It was unfair. And it was not your fault." Andrew nodded, blinking rapidly. "I know, Dad. But what can we do about it? It's not like they're going to apologize." David's expression shifted slightly, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Well, that remains to be seen." He turned to Tyrell. "Call your mom. Ask if she can meet us at our house in an hour. I think we need to talk about what happened today, all of us together." As they drove through the city streets, David asked more questions about the dealership, who they spoke with, the names they remembered, what other customers were there. The boys answered everything, occasionally pulling up the video to reference details. "Are you planning to sue them, Mr. Thomas?" Tyrell asked. His mother was an attorney who specialized in discrimination cases. David shook his head. "I'm thinking of something that might teach a more lasting lesson." He glanced in the rearview mirror. "Sometimes the best response isn't a lawsuit. Sometimes it's showing people exactly who they misjudged." By the time they pulled into the driveway of the Thomas family's modest suburban home, both boys were leaning forward, eager to hear what David had in mind. Whatever it was, they could tell by the gleam in his eye that Premium Auto Gallery wouldn't soon forget it. The Thomas family's living room wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable. Andrew and his father had already arrived, and Tyrell's mother, Lisa Carter, joined them shortly after. She was still wearing her work clothes, a navy blue pantsuit with a no-nonsense attitude to match. As one of the city's most respected civil rights attorneys, she had seen cases like this before. "So they just threw you out?" she asked after hearing the boy's story. "No warning, no chance to explain yourselves properly?" Tyrell nodded, sliding his phone across the coffee table. "I recorded the last part. Watch." They all huddled around the small screen, watching as the security guard escorted the boys out while the sales manager, Mr. Whitfield, stood with his arms crossed, a satisfied look on his face. Liz's jaw tightened. Classic discrimination case. "We could file a complaint, maybe even a lawsuit. I've handled dozens like this." She pulled a legal pad from her bag, already jotting down notes. "David, are you willing to let Andrew testify if it comes to that?" David Thomas sat forward, elbows on his knees. His expression was thoughtful rather than angry. "Before we go down that road, I have another idea." He looked at the boys. something that might teach a more immediate lesson. He reached for his own phone, scrolling through his contacts before finding the number he wanted. "Hey, Michael," he said when the call connected. "It's David. Listen, aren't you still looking to upgrade your company fleet? 6 vehicles, right?" The boys exchanged confused glances as David continued his conversation. "Great. How about we go look at some options tomorrow? Premium Auto Gallery on 5th Street. I've heard they have excellent inventory." He paused, listening. "Perfect. Let's say 10 a.m., another pause. And Michael, wear your best. We're going to make quite an impression." David ended the call and turned to find 3 pairs of eyes staring at him with curiosity. "I don't get it, Dad," Andrew said. "Why would you want to give them business after what they did?" David smiled. "Who said anything about giving them business? Michael runs the transportation division at my old company. He's been looking to buy 6 luxury vehicles for their executives. That's a deal worth well over $500,000. Tyrell's eyes widened. "So you're going to show up with a huge potential sale and then what? Tell them to get lost?" "Not exactly," David replied. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, a chance to see who they really turned away today." He turned to Lisa. "Would you be willing to join us tomorrow as well?" As legal counsel, Lisa's serious expression broke into a smile. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." "And what about us?" Andrew asked, gesturing between himself and Tyrell. "You'll be there too," David said, "but not right away. And not dressed like you are now." He stood up and walked to the hallway closet, pulling out 2 garment bags. "Remember those suits we got for your cousin's wedding last month? I think it's time to put them to good use." As understanding dawned on their faces, David continued outlining his plan. By the time he finished, even Lisa was nodding with approval. "It's not about revenge," David explained. "It's about education. People like Mr. Whitfield won't learn from a lawsuit that the company's insurance will pay for. They learn when they're faced with the consequences of their prejudice personally." Later that evening, after Lisa and Tyrell had gone home to prepare for the next day, Andrew found his father in his home office, typing on his laptop. "Dad," he said quietly from the doorway, "can I ask you something?" David looked up. "Of course. Why don't we live in a bigger house? Or drive fancy cars? I mean, after today, I know we could afford it." David leaned back in his chair. "Because I wanted you to understand something important. Respect isn't determined by what you own, but by who you are." He smiled at his son. "And tomorrow, Mr. Whitfield is going to learn that very same lesson." As Andrew went to bed that night, he could hardly sleep. For the first time since the humiliating experience at the dealership, he felt a sense of justice brewing. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The next morning arrived with golden sunshine that made the chrome details on the cars at Premium Auto Gallery sparkle like diamonds. Inside, the sales team was having their daily meeting. Mr. Whitfield, the sales manager who had thrown the boys out yesterday, was reviewing their targets for the month. "We're still short on our luxury quota," he said, tapping his pen against the sales chart. "I need everyone focused on the high-end models today. No time wasters, understood?" Just as the meeting ended, the receptionist's voice came through on the intercom. "Mr. Whitfield, there's someone here you might want to greet personally." Whitfield stepped into the showroom and froze. There, in the center of the polished floor, stood a vehicle that rarely appeared even in their dealership, a Rolls-Royce Phantom in midnight black, its spirit of ecstasy hood ornament catching the light. The chauffeur was holding the rear door open as a man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped out. Whitfield rushed forward, straightening his tie. "Welcome to Premium Auto Gallery, sir. I'm Richard Whitfield, sales manager. That's quite a magnificent vehicle you arrived in." The man smiled pleasantly and extended his hand. "David Thomas. And thank you, it gets the job done." Whitfield's eyebrows shot up at the understatement. This Phantom was worth at least $500,000. "What brings you to our humble establishment today, Mr. Thomas? Looking to add to your collection?" "Actually," David said, "I'm here representing a corporate interest. My associate, Michael Chen." He gestured to another well-dressed man who had emerged from a separate vehicle, is the transportation director for Nexus Technologies. They're looking to purchase a fleet of executive vehicles, 6 to start with. Whitfield's eyes widened, dollar signs practically visible in them. A six-vehicle fleet deal would be the biggest sale of the year. He snapped his fingers at his staff. Harrison, coffee for our guests. Jennifer, bring the portfolio of our executive models. He turned back to David with his most ingratiating smile. Please, gentlemen, let me show you to our private consultation room. As they walked, David glanced around the showroom. Impressive inventory. I understand you specialize in luxury vehicles exclusively. That's correct, Whitfield said proudly. Our clientele expects only the best. We cater to a certain caliber of customer. The implication in his tone was clear, wealthy people only. For the next hour, Whitfield pulled out all the stops. He brought in their master technician to explain the engineering excellence of their vehicles. He had their finance manager prepare special bulk pricing options. He even called the owner of the dealership to get approval for unprecedented discounts. So, Whitfield said, spreading the paperwork before them, we're talking about 3 BMW 7 Series, 2 Mercedes S-Class, and 1 Audi A8. With the fleet discount, we're at $485,000 for the package. We're practically giving them away at that price. David nodded thoughtfully. It sounds reasonable. There's just one thing I'd like to do before we proceed. Anything, sir? Whitfield replied eagerly. David checked his watch. I believe my son and his friend should be arriving about now. I'd like their input as well. Whitfield's smile never faltered. Of course, family input is always welcome here. The front doors of the dealership opened, and two young men in perfectly tailored suits walked in. Their shoes were polished to a shine, and they carried themselves with quiet confidence. It took Whitfield a moment to recognize them, the same two black teens he had thrown out of the dealership just yesterday. The color drained from Whitfield's face as the realization hit him. He looked from the boys to David and back again, his mouth opening and closing without making a sound. Mr. Whitfield, David said calmly, I believe you've already met my son, Andrew, and his friend, Tyrell. They were here yesterday doing research for a school project. His voice remained pleasant, but his eyes had turned to steel. Perhaps you remember them. The entire showroom had gone silent. All eyes were on the sales manager as he struggled to find words. Behind the boys, Lisa Carter walked in, her attorney's briefcase in hand, and the dealership owner, who had arrived to help close the large sale, stepped forward with a confused expression. Is there a problem here? The owner asked, looking between his suddenly pale sales manager and the potential $500,000 clients. Actually, David said, I think there is, and I'd very much like to discuss it. The silence in the showroom was so complete you could have heard a key fob drop. Mr. Whitfield's face had gone from pale to a deep, uncomfortable red. The dealership owner, a man named Frank Wilson, who had rushed over at the prospect of a major sale, looked between his sales manager and the well-dressed family with growing concern. Would someone please explain what's going on? Wilson asked, his businessman's instinct telling him something was very wrong. David Thomas kept his eyes on Whitfield. Perhaps Mr. Whitfield would like to explain how he treated my son and his friend when they came in yesterday for a school project. His voice was calm but carried throughout the showroom. Or maybe we should just show you. Tyrell pulled out his phone and played the video he had recorded. The footage wasn't long, just 30 seconds of them being escorted out while Whitfield talked about real customers and kids wasting time. But it was damning. Wilson's face darkened as he watched. When the video ended, he turned to Whitfield. Is this true? Whitfield swallowed hard. Sir, they were just kids in hoodies. They didn't look like serious customers. I was protecting our business environment. They were students, Lisa Carter cut in, stepping forward with her professional demeanor in full force. Here for an economics assignment, which they explained to you. And your response was to publicly humiliate them and have security remove them. Wilson turned to the boys. I am deeply sorry for how you were treated. This is not how we do business here. Andrew nodded but kept his composure. We weren't asking to test drive anything. We just wanted some brochures and basic information for our project on luxury marketing strategies. David placed a hand on his son's shoulder. When Andrew called me yesterday, I could have responded in many ways. I could have immediately told him who I was. He looked directly at Whitfield. That I'm the founder of Thomas Tech Solutions, that I sold my company last year for $8 billion. That I have a garage with vehicles worth more than your annual sales. Gasps rippled through the showroom. Even Wilson looked shocked. But I didn't build my company by flashing my wealth, David continued. And I haven't raised my son to think his worth comes from what his father owns. I raised him to believe that people should be judged by their character, not their appearance or their wallet. Whitfield had begun to visibly sweat. Mr. Thomas, if I had known. That's precisely the problem, David interrupted. You shouldn't need to know someone's bank account to treat them with basic respect. Michael Chen, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. As transportation director, I make decisions not just based on vehicles but on the companies we partner with. Their values matter to us. Wilson stepped forward again. Mr. Thomas, Ms. Carter, gentlemen, please join me in my office. I want to discuss this properly. He shot a stern look at Whitfield. Richard, you too. As they walked toward the back office, Andrew leaned over to Tyrell. Did you see his face when he realized who my dad was? He whispered. Tyrell nodded. But your dad's handling it really well. He's not just embarrassing the guy. In Wilson's spacious office, the owner took a seat behind his desk, looking genuinely disturbed. First, I want to personally apologize to both of you young men. What happened was unacceptable. Andrew and Tyrell nodded their acknowledgement. And Mr. Thomas, Wilson continued, I understand if you want to take your business elsewhere. But I'd like to explain that this incident doesn't reflect our company values. David exchanged glances with Lisa before responding. Mr. Wilson, I didn't come here today for an apology, though it's appreciated. And I didn't come to punish your business by walking away from a deal you clearly want. Then what did you come for? Wilson asked. David leaned forward. I came to suggest something more valuable than both those options, something that might actually make a difference. He looked pointedly at Whitfield, who was standing uncomfortably by the door. I came to propose a solution that addresses the real problem. Wilson's eyebrows raised with interest. I'm listening. Everyone in Frank Wilson's office leaned forward as David Thomas began to explain his proposal. Even Mr. Whitfield, still standing uncomfortably by the door, seemed eager to hear what might save this situation. Your dealership has a problem, David said simply. And it's not just Mr. Whitfield here. It's a culture that judges people by their appearance rather than treating everyone with equal respect. Wilson nodded slowly. I understand, and I want to fix it. Good, David replied, because I believe in fixing problems, not just pointing them out. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. I've prepared some suggestions. Lisa Carter smiled slightly. She had helped draft these ideas the night before, after the boys had gone to bed. First, David continued, I suggest implementing a comprehensive anti-bias training program for all your staff. Not just a one-day seminar that everyone forgets, but ongoing education. He slid a document across the desk. This is a list of respected firms that specialize in this work. My company used the top one when we were scaling up. Wilson took the paper with genuine interest. I can make this happen immediately. Second, David said, I propose you create a mystery shopper program. Hire people of different ages, races, and styles of dress to come in and report back on how they're treated. Make it clear to your staff that their performance reviews will be partly based on these reports. Whitfield shifted uncomfortably. Sir, with all due respect, our job is to sell cars, not. Your job, David interrupted firmly, is to sell cars to everyone who might want to buy one, not just the people you think look right. Do you have any idea how many sales you lose by prejudging customers? Wilson shot Whitfield a look that silenced him. The mystery shopper program is an excellent idea, Mr. Thomas. What else? David smiled and turned to Ander and Tyrell. This last suggestion actually came from these young men. They were up late last night thinking about it. Ander sat up straighter. We thought that maybe the dealership could start an internship program for high school students interested in business, marketing, or the automotive industry. Tyrell nodded eagerly, especially for students from neighborhoods and backgrounds that might not normally get these opportunities. It would help the students and might change how your staff sees young people like us. Wilson's expression brightened. That's actually brilliant. We've never done anything like that before. We'd be willing to help design it, Andrew added. As part of our economics project even. David watched his son with quiet pride before turning back to Wilson. So those are my suggestions. No lawsuit, no public shaming on social media, which would have been easy to do with that video. Just real, meaningful change. Wilson extended his hand across the desk. Mr. Thomas, we will implement every one of these suggestions. You have my word. And the fleet purchase? Michael Chen asked, speaking up for the first time in a while. David exchanged glances with him. We're still interested, but let's revisit that in 6 months, after we see these changes in action. Wilson nodded, understanding the test before him. And Mr. Whitfield, he asked, glancing at his sales manager who looked both relieved and worried. David considered the man for a long moment. Everyone in the room could feel Whitfield's career hanging in the balance. That's your decision as his employer, David finally said. But I believe in second chances. If he's willing to learn and change, maybe he could even help lead some of these new initiatives. Whitfield's eyes widened with surprise. I would be willing to do that, sir. As they all stood to leave, Andrew approached Whitfield directly. Looking him in the eye, he said, yesterday you saw 2 black kids in hoodies and made assumptions about who we were and what we deserved. I hope next time you'll see people first. Whitfield nodded, genuine regret on his face. I'm truly sorry, and I thank you for this chance to do better. Outside in the parking lot, as they walked toward their vehicles, Tyrell turned to David. Sir, can I ask you something? You could have crushed this place, bought it and fired everyone. You have the money. Why go through all this trouble instead? David placed a hand on each boy's shoulder. Because destruction is easy. Building something better takes work. He smiled at his son. And because some lessons are worth more than money. As they drove away, Andrew looked back at the dealership through the window. It looked exactly the same from the outside, but he knew something important had changed inside. And so had he. 6 months had passed since that day at Premium Auto Gallery. The early summer sun warmed the dealership's windows as Andrew and Tyrell walked through the front doors. This time, no one tensed up when they entered. Instead, they were greeted with smiles and nods of recognition. The interns are finishing up their presentations in the conference room, said the receptionist, looking up from her desk. Mr. Wilson and Mr. Whitfield are already there. The boys, now high school graduates headed to college in the fall, made their way to the back of the dealership. The changes over the past 6 months were visible everywhere. The walls featured a new, diverse set of customer testimonials. Brochures were available in multiple languages, and most noticeably, the staff itself looked different, more varied in age, gender, and ethnicity. They slipped quietly into the back of the conference room, where 5 high school students were presenting their final projects from the internship program. The current group included teams from neighborhoods across the city, each sharing their ideas for improving the dealership's connection with young consumers. Our survey showed that 68% of high school students have never been inside a luxury car dealership, a girl in a hijab was explaining as she pointed to a graph. But 72% said they would visit if they knew they were welcome just to learn, even if they couldn't buy yet. Frank Wilson nodded with interest, jotting notes. Beside him sat Richard Whitfield, who had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation of all. After nearly losing his job that day, he had taken the second chance offered to him and run with it. To everyone's surprise, he had thrown himself into the diversity initiatives with genuine commitment, eventually becoming their most passionate advocate. When the presentations ended and the students filed out, Wilson spotted Andrew and Tyrell at the back of the room. Perfect timing, he said, walking over to shake their hands. I was hoping you've stopped by today. The program you helped design has been a game changer for us. Whitfield joined them, looking more relaxed and genuine than he had 6 months ago. Our mystery shopper scores have gone up 47%, he said proudly. And sales are up too. Turns out, treating everyone with respect is actually good for business. Andrew nodded. That's great to hear. But we actually came for a specific reason. He glanced at Tyrell, who handed over an envelope. It's an invitation. To our graduation next week. We'd like you both to come. Whitfield looked genuinely moved. I'd be honored, he said quietly. As they toured the showroom, a sleek Rolls-Royce pulled into the parking lot outside. David Thomas stepped out, dressed in casual clothes rather than the power suit he'd worn on his last visit. Right on time, Andrew said with a smile as his father entered. Wilson extended his hand. Mr. Thomas, good to see you again. I hear you've been making some real changes, David said, looking around approvingly. We have, Wilson confirmed, and we're grateful for the push. Whitfield stepped forward somewhat nervously. Mr. Thomas, I wanted to thank you personally. Most people would have tried to ruin me that day. You gave me a chance to become better instead. David studied him for a moment. And have you? I believe I have, Whitfield replied honestly. I catch myself making assumptions sometimes, but now I recognize it and correct it, and I've been mentoring our interns from neighborhoods I used to, well, avoid. David nodded satisfied. Then I think we have some business to discuss. He turned to Michael Chen, who had just arrived. I believe we were interested in a fleet purchase. Later, as the paperwork was being finalized on a deal worth over $500,000, Andrew pulled his father aside. You knew all along you were going to buy the cars if they actually changed, didn't you? David smiled. I had hope, but they exceeded my expectations. Real change is rare. When you see it, it should be rewarded. Across the showroom, two teenage boys in hoodies walked hesitantly through the front door. Without missing a beat, Whitfield approached them with a genuine smile. Welcome to Premium Auto Gallery, they heard him say. How can I help you today? Andrew nudged his father. See that? That's worth more than any car in this place. As they prepared to leave, Charles looked back at the dealership. You know what's crazy? If they had just treated us with respect that first day, none of this would have happened. Andrew nodded. Sometimes the worst days lead to the best changes. One experience changed a whole business, Charles observed. Makes you wonder what else we might change. David put his arms around both young men's shoulders. With your generation leading the way, I think a whole lot more than just one car dealership.